Most people know one name, Thurgood Marshall, the lawyer who argued Brown versus Board of Education, the man who became the first black Supreme Court justice. His name is in every history book, every classroom, every documentary. But here is what they never told you. 4 years before that famous case, Marshall fought a different battle. Same fight, same enemy, different weapon. A weapon so strange, so absurd, that most Americans have never even heard of it. A university, backed by an entire state government, built a fake law school in a basement, 3 small rooms, no windows, no library, no real faculty, built for one reason only, to keep one man out. His name was Heman Marion Sweatt, and this is the story of the basement they built to bury him. I was not even looking for this story. I was researching something else entirely, when I found a court case that stopped me cold. A case about a school that barely existed, a school built in a hurry, a school designed to fail. The more I read, the more I could not believe what I was looking at. An entire state government spent more money hiding the truth than it would have spent just telling it. If this is the kind of history they do not teach you, the kind they hope you never find, then make sure you subscribe to this channel, because we are just getting started. To understand what happened to Heman Sweatt, you have to understand what life was like in Texas in 1946. This was not ancient history. This was living memory. This was the American South under Jim Crow, a set of laws and customs designed to keep Black Americans separate, inferior, and silent. Black Americans could not attend the same schools as white Americans, could not drink from the same water fountains, could not sit in the same courtrooms. Every part of public life was divided by race, and higher education was no exception. If you were black in Texas, and you wanted to become a lawyer, there was nowhere in the entire state for you to go. Not one school, not one classroom, nothing. Heman Marion Sweatt was born in Houston, Texas, in 1912. His father worked for the Railway Postal Service. His mother pushed education hard, in a home that valued it above almost everything else. Heman grew up watching his father read constantly, and he followed that same path. He attended Wiley College, a historically black college in Marshall, Texas. He studied biology. He was smart, methodical, quiet, the kind of student professors remembered years later, not because he was loud, but because he was thorough. After college, Heman worked as a substitute teacher for a while. Then he took a job as a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service in Houston. 11 years, walking routes, delivering mail, watching his city up close, block by block. But something else was happening in Texas during those same years. Black postal workers were organizing, pushing back against unequal treatment inside their own union. Heman became involved early. He watched black workers get passed over for promotions that went to less experienced white employees. He watched grievances get filed and quietly buried in paperwork. He watched how slow, procedural resistance could kill a fight for fairness without a single person ever raising their voice. That experience would matter more than he knew. He decided if he was going to keep fighting battles like this for the rest of his life, he wanted to understand the law itself, not just feel its weight from the outside. He wanted to know how to use it. By the mid-1940s, Heman had decided he wanted to become a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. He wanted to attend law school in his own state, at the University of Texas, the flagship public university, the one his tax dollars helped fund. In February of 1946, he applied. The university had exactly one law school. It was for white students only. Texas law required racial segregation in public education, and the University of Texas followed that law without hesitation. Heman was rejected, not on merit, on race alone. He could have walked away. Many people in his position did because fighting back could cost you your job, your safety, sometimes your life. But Heman did not walk away. He reached out to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Their legal team had been building toward exactly this kind of case for years. chipping away at segregation, one lawsuit at a time, looking for the right plaintiff and the right university to challenge. Heman Sweatt became that plaintiff. His attorneys filed suit, arguing that the state of Texas was violating his rights under the 14th Amendment by denying him access to a legal education equal to what white students received. The state of Texas had a problem now. The 14th Amendment guaranteed equal protection under the law. Segregation was legal under a doctrine called separate but equal, established decades earlier in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. As long as facilities for black and white students were considered equal, segregation could technically stand. The problem was simple. Texas had no equal facility for Heman. There was no black law school in the entire state. So instead of admitting him, or building something real, the state chose a third option. They decided to build something that looked equal on paper, but was never designed to actually function. Where did they put this new law school? In the basement of an office building in Austin, near the state capitol. Not a college campus, not a library, not a building designed for legal education. Just 3 rented rooms below ground level, hastily converted, meant to exist just long enough to satisfy a courtroom. No permanent faculty, a couple of part-time instructors, borrowed from other schools, expected to teach law, out of a basement. No dedicated law library, the single most essential resource for any law student, because legal education depends almost entirely on access to case law and legal texts. Heman visited the site. He saw it for exactly what it was. He refused to enroll. His lawyers went back to court and argued that this makeshift basement setup could not possibly be considered equal to the University of Texas Law School, an institution with an established faculty, a full library, and generations of academic reputation behind it. The state kept trying to patch the problem. They moved the proposed school a few times. They renamed it more than once. Eventually, they announced plans to build something more substantial, tied to the newly created Texas Southern University, a historically black institution in Houston. But the case had already moved beyond that. The real question being asked in court was bigger. Could separate ever truly be equal, when the entire system, funding, prestige, faculty, and history had been built for over 100 years around one race and against another? Before it ever reached the Supreme Court, a trial court in Texas heard testimony on the basement school directly. Legal experts and university deans were called to the stand. They were asked, under oath, whether 3 rooms with borrowed instructors could be considered equal to an established law school with decades of history behind it. Witness after witness admitted the truth, sometimes reluctantly. There was no meaningful law library. There was no permanent faculty. There was no accreditation. There was, in the plainest terms, no real school at all. The case reached the United States Supreme Court in 1950. Thurgood Marshall, the Knox chief counsel, argued the case personally. Marshall would go on to become the first black justice on the Supreme Court itself. But at this point in his career, he was still fighting these battles from the outside, one case at a time. Marshall's argument was simple and difficult for the state to answer. A law degree is not just a stack of textbooks. It is built on reputation, on the professors who write the case law students study, on the alumni network that opens doors for the rest of a career. None of that could be built overnight in a basement. None of that could ever be equal, no matter how many desks the state crammed into those 3 rooms. On June 5, 1950, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of Heman Sweatt. The court found that the makeshift basement law school could not possibly provide an equal education. It lacked the faculty, the library, the reputation, and what the court called the intangible factors that made a legal education valuable. The ruling ordered the University of Texas to admit Heman Sweatt. This decision did not end segregation nationwide. That would come 4 years later, in 1954, with Brown versus Board of Education. But Sweatt versus Painter, the case named after Heman and the university president he sued, cracked the legal foundation that segregation stood on. It proved that separate could never truly be equal, not when one side controlled the resources and the other side got a basement. Heman enrolled at the University of Texas Law School in the fall of 1950, but the years of pressure, isolation, and the toll of being the center of a national legal battle had worn him down. He struggled academically, under the weight of everything happening around him, and ultimately did not complete his law degree there. He never became a practicing attorney, but the case that carried his name became one of the most cited decisions in American civil rights law. Studied in law schools for generations, including at the very university that once refused to let him walk through its doors. Years later, the University of Texas placed a marker on campus, acknowledging what happened to Heman Sweatt. A small plaque, easy to miss if you are not looking for it, standing near buildings that once would not let him inside. It reads less like a monument and more like a quiet admission, the kind institutions give, only after the fight is long over and the outcome can no longer be changed. The basement law school itself did not disappear quietly. It eventually evolved into what is now Thurgood Marshall School of Law, part of Texas Southern University, named after the very attorney who once argued that a basement could never equal a legacy. So somewhere underneath a government office building in Austin, Texas, there were once 3 small rooms, no windows, no library, no real faculty, built in a hurry, meant to be forgotten, the moment the lawsuit went away. Instead, those rooms became the crack that an entire legal system fell through. Here is what I want you to sit with. When we talk about history, we talk about the people who fought loudly, the famous cases, the famous names. But history is also made in the quiet places, in basements, in small rooms with no windows, where someone tried to make a problem disappear and failed. Heman Sweatt never became a lawyer, but he built the staircase that thousands of others walked up after him. He did not do it because it was easy. He did it because it was right. He walked away from a basement they built just for him, and he took the state of Texas to the highest court in the country. And he won. If this story made you feel something, if you are angry that you never learned his name in school, if you are sitting there thinking, how did I not know this? Then you are in the right place. This channel exists to find the names that history buried, the stories that were decided were not worth telling, and to make sure they are finally told. Subscribe if you have not already, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere in Austin, Texas, there are still 3 small rooms underground that the state hoped the world would forget. The least we can do is make sure they never are.